We have with us today Francois Gautier. Welcome.
Thank you.
You have been in India now for nearly 40 years.
Yes.
You came when you were 19 years old.
Yes.
On a lark, just because you were curious. Caravan of cars was driving from Paris.
Right.
And you came with them.
Exactly.
And got sucked in.
I drove from Paris, yes.
Yes.
And came to Delhi, not far from here. We slept in the ashram, in the Shirobindo ashram.
Oh,
At
yes,
that time
right
was
round
an
the corner.
old, beautiful house in the fields. And that was my first input of India, sleeping in that ashram and seeing in the sunset, the farmers coming back. And I felt extremely peaceful, and I decided that day that I would spend the rest of my life in India.
What was the element that got it?
But I had a very upper-class education in France, and I felt I didn't know the world. So I thought, let me go around the world and, become a human being, mature. And my best friend's father was the governor of Pondicherry. And so my friend told me there's a caravan of cars driving from Paris to Pondicherry to start a place called Auroville.
Okay.
The mother was French. She was Shirominda's companion. She was French. So she was starting Auroville in 68, 69. So I thought, it was very comfortable to drive, with 5 cars from Paris. And then from then on, I'll go on to Southeast Asia and Japan, US, and come back after a year and finish my studies and, become a man, so to say. So my parents agreed, and I took this caravan, and we drove. It took 6 weeks to drive from Paris to Delhi, and actually there were a lot of adventures. I wrote a book about it in French called The Inner Caravan, and came to Delhi and had this experience here in the ashram and decided that I would stay for the rest of my life. Then for 7 years I was in the ashram because the mother was still alive, and meeting the mother of Pondicherry was like the turning point of my life, the second turning point. So 7 years I lived in the ashram. I wrote a little bit. Then she passed away, and what to do? Suddenly you find yourself hanging. And had done a bit of journalism and photography before I left. I worked for a local newspaper in Paris.
And then the breakthrough came at the Asian Games.
Yes.
When you objected to an article that somebody had written, and you wrote a letter to the editor and said, these are the mistakes.
How did you find
and
that?
then he offered you to write, and that's when you started.
That's
writing.
absolutely true. There was the Asian Games in '82, and there was an article full of cliches about India. And I wrote to the editor, and I said, this is wrong. And he said, why don't you write an article? So that's how I started my career as a journalist.
Now, I've been reading a lot of your articles, and in one where you defined what it is to be a Hindu. So what does Hindutva mean to you?
But let me go back about my journalist career, because when I started freelancing after the Asian Games, I was in Pondicherry in those days, so I started freelancing in the south. And I did features in the south. My first feature was on Kalaripayat, which is a very ancient martial art of Kerala.
So now you're doing a book with Raghu Rai on it.
Yes, we started the book with Raghu Rai. And I met these people in Kerala, and then other people. I went to Ayappa, I did something Ayurveda, I did something on the Ayanas. And my first taste of India was non-political, but it was defining in the sense that the people I met, in the villages of Kerala or Tamil Nadu, these people touched me immensely. I felt, that they carried an acceptance, a spirituality which was in their genes. It was not like we in the West, we tend to think, okay, I have to be good. These people, accepted me, a Westerner with my ignorance, but it was something which was inbred in them. So that was my first taste of India. And later, when I became a political journalist, that Hindu-ness, I call it Hindu-ness, you can call it Indian-ness, because at some point it was in every Indian citizen, whether he was Muslim or Christian or Hindu, they had that, that Indian-ness, that something very special, which I feel is the genius of India. So when I became a political correspondent, this experience never left me, And for me, before talking about Hindutva, being a Hindu is a spirituality, because there's a very ancient knowledge here. What happens when you die, what happens when you're born, what are the different states of consciousness, what is karma, what is an avatar, which is a knowledge which is can be applied to everybody, whether you're Muslim or Christian. It's a universal knowledge. So for me, this is being a Hindu. Now, Hindutva is something a little more tricky, because Hindutva, is like the militant Hindu, and I believe, we have come to a stage where if that knowledge is to be preserved, there has to be a Hindutva movement that protects that knowledge, and that in the face of so many threats at the moment, because Hinduism, that ancient knowledge faces many threats, has a political arm and maybe a militant arm. So for me, this is Hindutva. But at the base, Hinduism is a spirituality which is universal, which can be, practiced by everybody. It's like pranayama. What is taught in pranayama today, can be taught, Christian or Muslim, and actually people like Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, they have Muslim, disciples and teachers and Christians. So for me, this is a true Hinduism. I felt when I came to Delhi, in '69, not far from here, when I met the mother, when I started freelancing, in Kerala in the south. In Delhi, it's more difficult because, you know Delhi as well as I do now. It's like a big bubble, and everything is there in Delhi, and people who tend to get corrupted in Delhi, They tend to lose, the roots, these roots, which is so important for India. But I touched it, I felt I touched it many places, including Kashmir, which I covered for many, many years for Le Figaro, which is the largest French newspaper. There also in Kashmir, I felt that, this knowledge, this ancient knowledge was there, this universal knowledge. And it was threatened in Kashmir.
Mm-hmm. Sufism certainly has been
Sufism
threatened.
certainly, is something that when I first went to Kashmir, it was still there, But I was there in Char al-Sharif when it was burnt, by the Pakistanis, and the militants, and this was like a bit like a death of Sufism in Kashmir, unfortunately.
Now, you have talked about the militant arm of Hinduism, Hindutva. Would you feel that it is necessary to be militant?
That's a tricky question, huh? Yes, it is, I mean, if you look at Hindus, they're wonderful people, I mean, absolutely wonderful. Whether, it's Prithviraj, whether it's today playing cricket with Pakistan, it's the same thing that repeats itself, that you slap me, it doesn't matter. I come back to you, my heart is open, I'm open to everything. But at some point, you need to defend yourself, And I think this is the message of the Bhagavad Gita, is that at some point, when your culture, your women, your children, your borders are threatened, it's all right to be militant. It's all right to defend yourself. I mean, people, kind of misinterpret this. They say, the Bhagavad Gita, endorses war, but no, it doesn't say that, I mean, I'm not an expert on the Bhagavad Gita, but what I understood is that at some point it's okay to protect that knowledge. This knowledge needs to be protected today.
Don't you think that by Hindus becoming militant, we are reducing ourselves to the same level of a militant Islam? Don't we have enough confidence in ourselves to maintain what we are and without having to be violent about it?
First, I'm a Frenchman, so I cannot. Frenchmen are they're a bit militant, and and secondly, I think that if you take, for instance, let's go topical now. If you take these cricket matches between India and Pakistan, there's some people say it's okay to play cricket with Pakistan, and some people say, why do you play cricket with a country which is betraying you? Where Vajpayee goes to Lahore, then Kargil happens, and then Musharraf comes, and he does something else,
Yes.
And now 26/11, they say it never happened. They don't want to hand over this guy, It doesn't make sense, I mean, militancy is not, being foolish. Militancy is also, that you look at things and say, okay, maybe we should not play cricket with Pakistan.
Yeah, that's a policy decision. And that's when...
But isn't it also Hinduness, The Hinduness is that, that, okay, fine, let us play cricket, let us give it another chance, let us accept. This is also...
I think it's, some would interpret it more as a political thing rather than a Hinduness. But I want to take you to your article, Illogicity and Politics, in which you talk about Gujarat and Godhra. And in that you have really placed a comparative argument in everything,
Right.
which is that the Congress did the same thing or worse in 1984.
Right.
So why blame Modi?
See, what I say also that, my experience of riots is that, they don't burst out suddenly, they're a result of a long simmering tension that, that the media doesn't necessarily see, the media just takes a small bit, and makes it into the whole, and the history between Hindus and Muslims actually is not as bad as made out, because if you take I don't know, like 2,000 years of history, it's not that bad. Or there are flares-ups, there are Gojras, but on the whole, it's not been that bad. That's the first point. The second point is that let's start by the 84, by the riots against the Sikhs. It's terrible what happened. But again, let us look at the root cause. I mean, for me, and I'm married to a Sikhni, and I love Sikhs. I think they're wonderful people. But to condone the crime of two bodyguards, were supposed to protect a woman, and you shoot a woman lying on the ground, and then to make today saints and heroes of these people is something which I, as a Frenchman, in logic, in all logic, I find completely wrong. So, fine, the riots were terrible and they need to be condemned. The culprits need to be brought to charges and judged and hanged if necessary.
Of those two men. Those two men were guilty of it, not the whole Sikh community.
No, but the whole Sikhs, I mean, that's a different topic. But since then, the Sikhs and the Hindus have kept growing apart. I mean, you meet today Sikhs in the States, and they tell you that, we feel closer to Aurangzeb than we feel to the Hindus. I mean, the chasm, the schism between Sikhs and Hindus today, to me, is frightening.
Now, I think it's for Sikhs who live in Western countries may have that
But
feeling.
even here, the Sikhs have gone astray.
Except for the 84 issue, in which there is still an anger because it hasn't ever been punished or resolved.
There's a lot of anger, for sure.
Yes, that is there. But culturally...
I think it started before, separatism. Why did Sikhs, who form 2-3% of India, who are so privileged, and who were so much help when they came from Pakistan, why should they, endorse a militancy that wanted to separate from India?
I think it was just basically identity politics which were being played upon, with ambitious politicians who saw themselves differently.
But you can't blame everything on politicians. You see, I mean, the Sikhs they're a body, they're a soul. They have an identity. They're wonderful people. I mean, their history is wonderful. But at the same time, I mean, we can't go, of course, into this whole story. Now, for Gojra, the same thing is true, I mean, for me, I'm a human being, If my wife, my children are burnt like animals in a train, and there's a long history of tensions, between my community, another community. After that, it's just the spark, and everything explodes, So we can't just take this particular incident of Gojra and saying it happened like that. It happened because of a long history of long problems, of simmering tensions, and this was the spark, this was a horrible spark that made everything explode. Now, as a journalist, I think, I need to inform my public, and make them aware of why this happened. It's not only, to blame Modi, whether Modi, waited, for 2 days before calling the army, or whether he did not, You can't blame everything on Modi. It's the whole people of Gujarat, I mean, then you have to judge the whole people of Gujarat.
It's true that I do agree that the media did not cover the Sabarmati horror enough. It moved very quickly onto the violence on against the Muslims.
Right.
However, there are 2 points here. As the great leader that Narendra Modi is hailed to be by so many people, if he was such a great leader, why did he not catch hold of the people who perpetrated the violence on the innocent people in the Sabarmati Express and hang them in public even, than unleashing? I believe that that kind of violence cannot happen in groups and by masses of people, as you said, thousands of people coming, without the feeling of the safety that there will be no repercussions from the state. And also I would like to point out that there has been interviews which you must have seen, which Tehelka did on Sting cameras, which you can say that Tehelka is an arm of the Congress or whatever,
No,
but
I'm not saying that.
But the point is, they were organized, that they did it in a planned fashion, and innocent Muslims were killed. Is that a good thing to happen? Is that an acceptable thing to happen? How can a chief minister not even show one iota of regret on that? He's a Hindu. Hindus are supposed to be a compassionate people.
Well, I don't know. I mean, from a human point of view, if my wife or my child is burned like an animal in a train, I may go down myself in the street, you know, because my anger is not only from that moment, it's a simmering anger for many, many, many years, you know, or many centuries even, you know. See, I mean, we live in a politically correct world. I mean, I should
No,
tell you that it's wrong. You know, I should tell you that it's wrong, that, you know, you cannot let anger explode like that. But I don't know. I just put myself in the position that if my wife or my child, you know, is burned like an animal by a crowd that willfully, you know, came with petrol, you know, and knew that children and wife were
my child
trapped.
is, God forbid.
Anger is anger, you know. Human nature is human nature.
Anyone's child is raped.
Even body may have
Human
felt angry.
nature is for the father of the girl to go and kill the man who raped her.
But it's been like that for, you know, as far as we can remember, and it's going to be like that.
But it's not allowed.
But this is, you know, in the political world of Delhi that you can say, oh, you control your anger. But, you know, human nature is not like that.
No, I'm not saying control
you know.
your anger. I'm saying use your anger.
But then you have to put on trial the people of Gujarat,
Exactly.
not Body, because people keep putting Body on trial. But it's the ordinary people of Gujarat who went, like in Delhi, you know, it is the ordinary people. Okay, all the politicians may have helped in Delhi for the anti-6 riots, you know, but it's the ordinary people who went in the streets.
Not. It was not the ordinary people. It was state organized in 84.
State might have helped, but the people went in the streets and they're the
it
ones.
was goon organized. It was organized goons. And the same in Gujarat. It can't happen without a state giving you're safe to do it.
You must know that we live in a world, you know, especially in India, which is politically correct. You know, you cannot say anything against Islam or Muslim, but you can, you know, as much as you want, you can, you know, bash up Hindus. You know, they can be killed, they can be murdered, they can be raped.
I agree with you. It's
very, and it's all okay. You know, in Kashmir, I was there. You know, I was there when the bandits were killed, the leaders. I was there. You know, I was there when they fled. You know, I saw all this. This opened my eyes. You know, I mean, what I saw in Kashmir opened my eyes.
Yeah, I have friends who fled, who are still in Delhi as refugees.
There are 400,000 people who became refugees in their own country. Everybody finds this acceptable. Now,
it's not acceptable. We should be aggressively
it's completely
political
acceptable in India. It's been accepted. You know, they've been, you know, recycled. Some of them are still. It's gone, finished. You know, they're not a vote bank. It's finished. You know what happens with Islam. You know, I mean, what I saw in Kashmir. I saw what, you know, what I saw. I said it. You know, and it's not politically correct. It's not. It will be eventually. You know, eventually it will be. But the moment it is not. So the same thing is true for Godhra. You know, you can defend Muslims, you know, forever, but Hindus are never defended.
I don't defend Muslims. I don't defend. I object to them.
Hello, I mean,
I
Hindus
object to them raising the
Pakistani
flag in India. I object to them cheering for Pakistan in matches. I object to them not being Indian first and Islamic first.
No, but we're talking about violence and death, you know. I mean, we're talking about, you know, violent deeds. Now, as far as violent deeds are concerned, Hindus, you know, from the first invasions in India have suffered so much more than Muslims, and yet it is more politically acceptable to defend Muslims than to defend Hindus. I defend Hindus. They are the genius of this country, you know. Though now in India it's not also not politically correct to say so, but I think that what is called Hinduism, you know, what people call it Hindus, but you know that knowledge, you know, that Hindus possess more than anybody is what makes India special.
What makes India special also is that we have accepted everybody.
Yeah, but at what cost? It's the one-way traffic, my dear. It's a one-way traffic. You've accepted everybody, but everybody slapped you. Everybody keeps slapping you today. The Christians keep converting you. The Muslims keep, you know, putting bombs everywhere. Or whether it's Pakistan or Bangladesh, or, you know, Bangladesh, you help them get their country. And look now, they stab you in the back. You know, it's been a one-way traffic for 2,000 years. Fine, it's beautiful, it's lovely, but it's a one-way traffic. Recognize that.
I think we are mixing two things. One is the politics of it, which is Bangladesh and whatever, and we're mixing Hinduism. See, Hinduism is what we're talking about, is that if we want Muslims to be loyal to India, first, by doing what happened in Gujarat, we are creating little Osama bin Ladens. If a little boy sees his whole family being killed, there is a strength in Hinduism which can demand loyalty from an Indian citizen of whatever religion in a different way, in an intellectual way, in an emotional way, which is not violent. Do you think that's possible?
See, the question is whether you answer violence by violence. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, Mahatma Gandhi had a different point of view. He said you answer violence by non-violence. He told the Jews, you know, okay, you suffered so much, but you know, just offer yourself. You know, I mean,
No, that's
Hitler wants to
crazy.
kill you all. But this is
I
not.
don't agree with that. What I'm saying is,
But this is the other way. There's no other way. Either you answer violence by non-violence, you know, or at some point. But of course, violence is dangerous. It's very dangerous. I mean, you saw the LTT. I remember the LTT. They were nice young students in the 80s, and look what they became, just, you know, butchers and murderers. So, of course, violence is a dangerous thing. But at some point, you know, whether, let's call it militancy, you know, is not an answer to, you know, to this one-way traffic. I'm not sure, and this is where Hindutva comes. I must say
but the
that
one-way traffic is the political side.
my whole life is politics, you know. I mean, Chorobino said you put 10 people together, you know, politics start, you know. So
You also compared the Khalistan movement in the same article that was quelled in the 80s by K.P.S. Gill, who had numerous fake encounters and was pretty violent in putting it down. And you compared Gujarat to one fake encounter.
yeah, I do believe the same thing, that terrorists have no laws, you know. And I remember, you know, this Putin, the way he put down that when these Chechen people took over that cinema hall in Moscow, the whole world was outraged, you know, at the way, you know, these
But
special
K.P.S.
forces.
Gill was the state working against terrorists. Gujarat
But he managed to
was
quell
the-
the
But
he
you're
managed it.
comparing a state working against terrorists with Gujarat, which was people out on the streets.
I was referring,
So
to
that's
these
a fake
cases, you know. I was
encounter.
referring to this famous fake encounter also, you know, for which the child has been
So
tried.
people
and-
out in the streets is not a fake encounter.
No, I think this is, I don't know how this came, because actually I was referring to the fake encounter for which that Shah is judge, and, you know, for so many, I forgot the name of that guy, you know, who was killed with his wife in a fake encounter in Gujarat.
in Gujarat.
Yeah, so I was referring to that particular.
Oh, so but the
I think
connection
something
here
is missing
is
there. Something is missing
okay.
there.
All right. And the other thing that you've written about over here also is that how Indian business has praised Gujarat for its efficiency,
Right.
lack of corruption, the
Right.
ease with which people can do business over there.
Right.
Do you think that prosperity is more important than value of life?
Well, did Krishna value life? No, he told Arjuna to fight his, cousins, and you know, I mean, you can also, and he's been accused actually of being, you know, endorsing war and violence. You know, I think a leader, you know, of modest, you know, stature, and any great leader has to be able to order violence. I think so. I think India needs a nationalist leader who will not be scared to go to war if necessary. Because the problem of India is that it has had a series of prime ministers, you know, including Mr. Vajpayee, you know, who were too goody-goody for being good leaders. You know, you need ruthlessness. Yeah, one needs. I mean, I'm not a ruthless person. I'm not capable of it. But I think being a world leader for a country, look at China, how they're doing well. Their leaders are ruthless. You know, they're just, I mean, overboard. You know, I wouldn't like India to become like China, but that would be a disaster. But you need ruthlessness in a leader, absolutely. You know, and it's for his karma. You know, I mean, after all, Modi has got. If one believes, and I think you do, believes in Hinduism, you know, in that ancient knowledge, and there's the karma. And if Modi committed something wrong, he'll pay his karma. No doubt about it, you know. So, but I do think that a leader needs to be ruthless, you know, otherwise. And for India, which is facing so many threats, you know, so many threats from China. If there's a war, it's going to be with China for sure. You know, now when the Americans withdraw from Afghanistan, again the Taliban is going to come back. India is going to suffer from that, you know. Then more eastwards, there is Burma, you know, which now the Chinese are taking over more or less, you know. India is facing so many threats today. Bangladesh and Sri Lanka is hostile. You know? So you need someone who may be a good person, but who has ruthlessness. And that is lacking in India. The Hindus lack that quality.
So would you call yourself a fundamentalist?
No, not at all. I mean, no, I mean, I'm a journalist. Okay, by accident I became a journalist, you know, but I think the first quality of a journalist is to First, I'm not a Hindu. I'm born Christian, educated Catholic. I come from a very Catholic background. My father was a very good man, a staunch Catholic. My uncle was a priest. You know, he was the parish. He was the parish head of the Montmartre church in Paris. So my background is totally different. I came here not knowing was a Hindu, not knowing was a Muslim, not knowing. I knew nothing about India. Absolutely nothing. I was totally ignorant. So my atavism, like if I'm a Hindu, I may defend Hindus, but I'm a Christian who defends Hindus, you know, which is something unusual. So the first quality of a journalist is truth. I mean, what you perceive, you know, with your own faults, you know, atavism, what you perceive as truth, this is what you should report, you know. So in that sense, you know, I consider myself someone who's truthful. I've always reported what I saw. I always written what I believed is what I saw and perceived. You know? And if that makes me a fundamentalist, so be it. But I stand by truth. You know? Even if I make it, if I have it wrong, you know, even if I don't perceive the whole truth, what I have seen and perceived, I have written it and stood by it over the years, because many people, they tend to, you know, to fade away. You know, they have strong conviction when they're young, and then it fades. You know, but I have stood by it, and I'll still stand by it. So that makes me a fundamentalist, so be it.
Well, you have many followers and fans who read you and appreciate you. Thank you.
My pleasure, thank you.